In today's video, we have some pretty substantial trade rumors to take a look at. Could we see some big names in St. Louis make it available and traded, including Captain Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko? Could Erik Karlsson possibly end up in Edmonton? And could we see a pretty significant trade between the Vancouver Canucks and the Washington Capitals, including Brock Boeser? Plus, we have several other updates from around the league, including several injuries and a lot of activity on the waiver wire. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some pretty substantial trade rumors to take a look at today as well. We do have a busy day on the NHL waiver wire. Today we have Calgary Flames forward Kevin Rooney on waivers. We have the New York Rangers forward Ryan Carpenter, as well as Colorado Avalanche former first rounder from 2018 and a guy who still can't seem to stick, and that's Martin Kaut. We also have Oilers youngster Tyler Benson. So 4 players on waivers today that could be claimed. We'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. I think all of these teams are kind of doing some juggling right now with their rosters and trying to create some roster space. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be completely shocked if we've seen a player like Kaut or Benson maybe picked up. I don't know that we're going to see Ryan Carpenter or Kevin Rooney get picked up. I'm not sure that they're really having a season that's desirable enough for other teams to take a chance on their services. Rooney's contract, to me, especially with the second year at over $1 million, just doesn't look all that appealing here, in my opinion. So we'll have to see. Now, we also have another player on waivers applying through the Boston Bruins organization, but this is different. This is one what we call unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. And it's former 2017 draft pick Victor Berglund of Sweden. So he has been in the minors for the past couple of seasons, mostly playing in the American Hockey League, a little bit in the East Coast League, but playing very limited amounts this year. So he obviously must want to go back home. That's usually what we see in that case. In this case, the player likely signs back in Europe and gets a better opportunity if they're only going to be able to play at the East Coast or a limited American Hockey League level. So that's 5 players on waivers. One is unconditional, with his contract being mutually agreed to be terminated. Now on to some roster news. We get the Toronto Maple Leafs are getting back defenseman TJ Brodie tonight. Of course, they're in action against the LA Kings. That game's already started here. Before I started to record, they get off to a good start. I believe it was 2 or 3-0 for the Leafs in the first period. So that's obviously a nice bump for them. Sandin Liljegren have been playing well as of late. But getting Brodie back in there will certainly be a nice addition. Giordano and Justin Hall has actually been doing pretty well too, I think it's fair to say. They battled through a lot of adversity. You didn't even know they've had a lot of injuries on the blue line. It's been like a rotation back there. They've still been able to keep up and still win most of their games. So it's good on them. So we'll have to see. To me, the Leafs, the big test will always be in the playoffs. They've been a tremendous regular season team for some time now. So we'll see. Same thing early last year. They faced some adversity, had a real solid record early on. So good on them, and good to see some bodies coming back. But they did lose a player early in tonight's game, and that's youngster Nick Robertson, who's can't seem like he can't buy a break lately. But he's been playing, in a limited role. But when he has, obviously had a real good game early on in the season, scoring the overtime winner. But ever since then, I found he's been somewhat stagnant, but it's not really entirely his fault. A lot of it, I think this is where he's been placed. But he took a hit from Kings defenseman Matt Roy, went into the boards awkwardly, and looked like, to me, I'm not a doctor by any means, but I would guess probably separated shoulder based on looking at the Nick Robertson head. Definitely a shoulder injury of some sort. That much we know. He went off the ice favoring the shoulder, and it's not going to return tonight. That's not good looking news at all. That could be a substantial injury to keep him out of action for some time. Thankfully, I guess from the Leafs team perspective, as much as he's been a nice welcome addition at times pitching in, they should be able to carry on here without him, and hopefully he can come back later in the season. And some other players being activated today, in Philadelphia, they were able to activate James Van Riemsdyk. They also recalled Cam York up as well, so York will get more of an opportunity to play. Jerard returns for the Philadelphia Flyers, who've been dealing with a ton of injuries there as well. The Winnipeg Jets got back defenseman Logan Stanley tonight. He's in action as well. Sandberg came out of the lineup. The Jets game's already underway here as well this evening. Logan Stanley goes in. He's only appeared in 5 games this season, so nice to see him get back into getting a chance to play. He's been out for quite a substantial period of time for Winnipeg. And the Florida Panthers tonight are also getting back captain Sasha Barkov. So Barkov had been out for a bit. Apparently they had to leave behind Spencer Knight and Anton Lundell on their road trip because they came down and ended up getting sick. I believe they did end up returning home shortly after the rest of the team did on their own. So certainly not good to see those two guys go down with an illness, which could be like flu related. I'm not sure, but obviously if the Panthers want them separated from the team, they certainly felt like it was something that could be spread around the locker room quite easily. And I know with what I've seen locally myself and dealt with at home, I know there's a ton of flu and cold viruses going around. So we'll see if the rest of the team can avoid coming down with whatever those two were able to pick up on their road trip. The Calgary Flames have finally recalled Matthew Phillips, arguably one of the top, if not the top American Hockey League player this season. Certainly a bit of an older, more seasoned prospect. I'm not sure you'd even call him the top prospect on the team, given the fact that, like I said, he is a little bit older. And at this point, it's difficult to say what his long-term outlook looks like as far as projections go and being an NHLer full-time and where he could fit and all that type of thing. But he is a very gifted offensive player. The only issue that's holding him back, at least with the Flames organization, is his size. Daryl Sutter does not seem to be a Matthew Phillips fan. I'm just a little bit surprised he was called up. To be honest, because we've heard comments from Sutter recently because he's been asked about Phillips and if the team would consider a call-up, and he didn't really want to say too much about it. So I just get the feeling that he's just not a fan of his game. Be curious to see if he actually gets into some action and can do some damage. We know the Flames have been linked to wanting another top 9 forward, and some have wondered if they might have that answer internally, and Phillips could be that player for them. I know Elliot Friedman on the Jeff Merrick show today indicated that he thought more players, at least one more, could be called up, and mentioned possibly that Jacob Pelletier might be a player that they bring up to get into a little bit of action as well. So we'll have to see about that. But nice to see Phillips get an opportunity for a call-up. Now let's see if Sutter plays him and what he can do in a lineup should he be given his opportunity. Now on to the trade section of the day. Let's start with Erik Karlsson. There's some reports today. We started with Darren Dreger talking about this, and I don't know if seeing other outlets talking about it as well. But the Edmonton Oilers maybe being a fit for Erik Karlsson longer term. We know that Karlsson and the Sharks have both made their own different statements about maybe being dealt. We know GM Mike Greer made it known via interview that he's willing to listen and willing to possibly trade the star defenseman. We've seen that candid interview with Erik Karlsson and Elliot Friedman on Hockey Night in Canada a couple Saturdays ago, which really was quite revealing as well in a sense. He said he wants to win. And he made a point at the end of the interview to say, I still have a lot of good years left too, guys. Like the conversation was pretty much over. They didn't even ask him about that, but he made a point to get that statement in there. And, he also said, like, just jokingly that, of course, that he really wants to win. When you're younger, you kind of think you have lots of time, which, you do in a way. But as you start to get older, you see the time slipping away. And he said that when he was younger, probably meaning when he was a child, of course, that he used to cry after every loss. And, of course, he doesn't do that anymore, just joking with the reporters. But still, he made it known that he's got lots of good hockey left in him, and he wants to win. Like, to me, that's him sending his message that he wants to go to a team where he'd have a shot. Now, Dreger talked about the fact that the Oilers are interested, but there's a lot in the organization that, even though there's interest, recognize that the trade could be virtually impossible and may never really ever get to a point where they're serious and they're really exchanging offers or anything like, to really be players in this kind of a sweepstakes here. But I know I've seen other reports suggesting that for the Oilers to get Karlsson, it would take Tyson Barrie, Jesse Puljujarvi, a couple of first rounders, and a prospect, maybe like, either Tyler Benson, Broberg, or one of those guys. And I'm like, that's 5 assets. That's 5 NHL assets right there, including 2 first rounders. Yes, the contract of some sort would have to go the other way to make the money work, but there's no way Edmonton would do that. That is way too much. And to be honest, I don't think San Jose is going to be expecting a 5-asset return on a player like that. I think I've heard other insiders, including Sarah Valley, talk about the fact that he figures that the Sharks won't get a great return on a Karlsson trade. But will they be looking to recoup what they gave up on that trade? Absolutely, they will be. At the same time, you got to acknowledge this is a different regime, a different time, and they're looking for more than anything for the salary cap flexibility here, not just asset management. That is part of it too, of course, but yes, if they eat half that income that he's got left, which is a big commitment on their part in a lot of years and money, sure, that'll increase the return, but I'm not sure it's going to be that substantial. So I don't know. I totally disagree with the fact of that's what the Oilers would need to pay. And to be honest, I'm not sure that really it's Edmonton's absolute biggest need. I mean, I don't know. Karlsson's a great defenseman and playing awesome right now. To some degree, I see a fit there. I'm just not sure that they could really pull it off. But we will see what happens. But certainly fair to say that there's going to be lots of suitors, lots of teams interested. It's just a matter of where things go. It's going to be something that's going to be complicated, and I think it's going to take some time. And if it does happen, it'll happen much closer to the deadline rather than earlier in the season like now. It's just going to take a while for this to kind of gain some legs and percolate before we see a team officially pull the trigger and make it happen. Now, Elliotte Friedman is also in his latest 32 Thoughts blog wondering about the future of a couple of prominent St. Louis Blues players, and I'm going to add another one to this mix as well. He wonders about Captain Ryan O'Reilly and sniper Vladimir Tarasenko, both in the final year of their deal. Of course, we've seen the Blues be an incredibly streaky team this year with big winning streaks and big losing streaks, but unfortunately they've done more losing than winning this year. And right now it looks like they are going to have a very tough time being a playoff team. Now, you can't write these guys out completely. We saw what they did back in 2019, going from worst to first, worst in the league, all the way to winning the Stanley Cup. So I certainly would be hesitant to write them off, that's for sure. But at the same time, they have to start making contingency plans for later in the season. Captain Ryan O'Reilly, I do think, has some desire to stay, and I think there's some desire on St. Louis's part to retain him. Friedman says essentially that if they're willing to pay him the equivalent of what a middle six center would be, and he's willing to sign, maybe on a shorter term basis, I'd say maybe 3 years or something to that effect, given he's in his early 30s now. And if he can do that for a figure that's reasonable for what maybe a number 2 center going into like a number 3 role will be, then perhaps we'll see him stay. But essentially, if he's feeling he can really cash in one more contract and get up around that $8 million or more mark, then I just don't see Doug Armstrong really wanting to take on anything that rich. We'll have to wait and see. But Tarasenko, to me, is as good as gone. We know that he wanted out. He had a trade request on the table, which has never been removed. And there's really been no more talk about him even entertaining staying and re-signing. So to me, as if the Blues are out of it, Tarasenko will be dealt, just a matter of where he goes and what the return is. But when it comes to O'Reilly, I think it's fair to say, like Elliotte Friedman said, there's a chance he stays. But you know what? If you go further on here and, looking like he wants more of a bigger payday next time, then he may have to be moved. And I do wonder about Jordan Binnington as well. The goaltender certainly has appeared to be very frustrated lately. In a recent interview, that certainly came across talking about his level of frustration and how the team hasn't been winning consistently this year. And we've even heard the coach call him out about he just needs to stay in his net and play goal and stop acting the tough guy and mouthing at the opposing team's bench and things like that. So, ultimately, I think there's a little bit of friction there. I do wonder if the relationship has any issues longer term, and maybe he's somebody that they take a look at as well. The only problem is last year they had Ville Husso, who could have been the goalie of the future. Now he's not there, so they might be a little bit more reluctant to make a move in between the pipes like that. They do have some other goaltending prospects that maybe could become that guy, but I'm not sure that anybody else is really ready to jump into that role that they could bring up from the American Hockey League. If they trade Binnington, they may need another goaltender in return, or be able to secure somebody that's fairly prominent through free agency. So it's not going to be easy at all, but we'll have to wait and see where things go. Now, Brock Boeser's been the top topic here of hot debate in and around the hockey world, really ever since last Saturday. And Elliotte Friedman dropped a bomb saying that the team had given permission to his agent to seek a trade and speak to other teams. That kind of shocked a lot of people and has really created a buzz around Boeser and his future in Vancouver. And then today in his 32 Thoughts blog, he expands on that a little bit further and wonders if we could see a trade between Vancouver and Washington with a Brock Boeser for Anthony Mantha, possibly a 1-for-1 deal, which would be a substantial trade between the two clubs for sure. Of course, Besser is a little bit younger than Mantha. Mantha is 28 years old, whereas Besser will be turning 26 this season. So there's about a 2-year and a little bit age gap between the two players. We saw both players not be the greatest as of yet. In the case of Mantha, he was a pretty consistent 25 to 30 goal guy with Detroit. Hasn't really lived up to the hype around the Washington Capitals the time, though. Like, since he's been there, he's been injured a lot, which has not helped. And he also hasn't consistently put the puck in the net when he has been healthy. So you got to wonder if a fresh start could be in order there for him as well. Now, of course, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and counting the current season, whereas Besser has 3. So Besser has 1 more year, of course, and he's making about $1 million per year more. So from Vancouver's perspective, you have to think from a salary cap perspective here, Vancouver would probably like that. They get 1 year less of term and a little bit less money. And of course, Mantha comes with a different dynamic than Besser. He's a huge guy, 6'5", like 225 pounds, former 25 goal scorer who might be able to fit in there and maybe rejuvenate his career. It's hard to say. But Besser, on the other hand, could go to Washington, which I don't know where they're going to put him. I mean, maybe he takes the top line right wing spot opposite Alex Ovechkin and then gives the Capitals top line maybe 2 real solid scoring threats there, right? The Washington Capitals will be in a difficult situation, though, not knowing the full-time, long-term future yet of Nick Backstrom. That's going to play a role in some of their decisions for sure. They also have some other players out for the season, including Connor Brown. They've had other guys like Lars Eller dealing with injury too. So, it's not a good situation in Washington. Their play hasn't been solid this year, but a lot of that is due to missing pieces due to injury. So ultimately, that's an interesting trade proposal here from Friedman, wondering if we could see a Besser for Mantha trade. I don't know. I mean, I can see why Washington might want to do that, and I can see why Vancouver might want to do that. It's a little bit of risk on both sides, and it's just hard to say if exactly it worked out that way or not. But let me know, does Washington have a chance here? Should they be going for Besser? Does that kind of trade from Friedman make sense to you? Mantha for Besser? Let me know your thoughts on the proposed trade down in the comments, or give me your counter mock trade suggestions, so we can look at it further in the comments and discuss and talk about it further. So, will Besser be in Washington? Will he be in Calgary? We've seen all these other teams linked to him in the last number of days. There's bound to be more. Hard to say where he finally ends up when a trade comes together. It could be some time, and it's, like I said, it's going to probably be the hot topic for a while, so don't be surprised if there's rumors popping up left and right here on different teams being in the mix. So we'll see what happens. But for now, let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.